Okay, let's unpack this. We're strapping in for a major road trip across 4 decades of sound. We're going deep into the tectonic history of West Coast hip hop.
And this isn't just about listing off hits, is it?
No, not at all. It's about charting a full-blown cultural revolution. We're talking from the raw local street parties of late 1970s LA all the way through to its current status.
As a global music powerhouse.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we've got this brilliant stack of historical analysis here that just meticulously charts that entire evolution.
The sound, the labels, the fashion.
All of it. And our mission for you, the listener, is to really synthesize how this one regional sound kept reinventing itself, but also how it stayed fundamentally rooted in the reality of the streets it came from.
That's the big picture right there. That's the tension. Because the West Coast sound, it started with funk and electro beats, and it exploded into the mainstream multiple times. But every single transformation, it always had to keep one foot planted in that street culture, in that realism.
That thread of realism is probably the most enduring part of this whole story. Its power comes from its willingness to be a direct voice for some really difficult realities, particularly that early and deep connection to the gang societies of LA, the Crips and the Bloods. That uncompromising expression of their environment is what shaped the genre's DNA.
And its global resonance.
And its global resonance, yeah.
So let's begin at the absolute foundation. We're in Los Angeles, late 70s, early 80s. Before the media spotlight really hit, the scene was building its own identity, merging street culture with these incredible, infectious funk beats.
Exactly, from Parliament Funkadelic groups like that. And before gangsta rap was even a term, the sound was all about innovation. It was a blend.
Yeah.
You had figures like Egyptian Lover, who was just instrumental in fusing the robotic sounds of electro with these early rap structures.
If you listen to his 1984 album, On the Nile.
Oh, yeah. You hear that blueprint, it's so clear. That machine-driven, danceable rap that really gave L.A. its early identity.
And it's fascinating to track the origin stories of the titans from this era. I mean, you see the early career of Dr. Dre.
Back in his world-class Wrecking Crew days.
Yeah. And it's almost hard to reconcile the smooth, serious producer we know today with the flashy, often lipstick-wearing electro-funk artist he was then. It just shows how much experimentation happened.
And how fast it happened.
Yeah.
That transformation is really the key to understanding the big shift in the 80s. The scene just moves from that playful electro-funk to something way more confrontational.
That realism.
That's where the foundation of realism was poured, and it hardened into gangster rap pretty quickly. It was an expression tied directly to the rising tensions in local communities.
And you have to talk about Ice-T here. He's really credited as the one who made the blueprint.
For sure. His album from '87, Rhyme Pays, that gave the world a real taste of that raw, narrative-driven storytelling. It was focused squarely on the struggles of street life.
And then came the explosion, the one that genuinely changed pop culture forever.
1988, straight out of Compton, NWA.
Yeah. The analysis we have here literally describes it as shaking society, and that is not an exaggeration.
Not at all. It just bypassed all the traditional media gatekeepers. It delivered these raw, unedited stories about conflict and survival straight into suburban America. It was a massive cultural trespass.
And it locked in the aesthetic, too. Visually, the era was defined by necessity, right?
Yeah.
Gritty, low-budget videos.
Shot quickly, yeah. And a very regional, authentic fashion.
Yeah.
The classic Kangol hats, the Adidas apparel, local sneakers, a look that was just immediately recognizable.
So NWA kicks the door down in the late 80s. They prove that this sound can sell. So the question for the 1990s becomes, what next? How do you take that raw reality and make it palatable for a massive global audience?
And the answer was G-funk.
G-funk. It defines the 90s. You can't even talk about West Coast hip-hop without really breaking down what that sound is.
It is the defining West Coast sound, period. Technically, what sets it apart is the sampling. It's meticulous sampling of 70s funk records.
Capturing those smooth, relaxed grooves.
Exactly. But then you overlay them with this thick, menacing synth bass line. And crucially, it was the sound of specific analog synthesizers, like a Moog.
Yeah.
They created that signature, wavering whine.
It sounded smooth, but it hit incredibly hard.
It really did.
And that sonic choice was just a cultural masterstroke.
Right.
That slow, laid-back tempo, it created this psychological feeling of, opulence.
A kind of laid-back confidence.
Yeah, which contrasted so sharply with the aggressive lyrics. It sounded like success and victory coming straight out of the struggle NWA had talked about.
And it was perfectly linked to lowrider and car culture. G-funk was the soundtrack for cruising. for showing off the South Central aesthetic.
The beat was designed to move through the air.
Right.
Yeah, to vibrate through the hydraulics and the polished chrome of a classic lowrider. That's what it was for.
And the architects. Well, they were unparalleled. Dr. Dre, moving way past his world-class Wreckin' Crew phase, he defines the gold standard with his 1992 masterpiece, The Chronic. That record didn't just establish G-funk, it created an entire ecosystem.
And it was immediately amplified by Snoop Doggy Dogg with Doggy Style in '93. Snoop's smooth, almost effortless flow. It took that G-funk blueprint and just made it universally accessible.
He made it cool everywhere.
He expanded West Coast influence to every corner of the globe. His voice was just so relaxed, even when the narratives were sharp.
So this era sees the rise of this huge commercial power, mainly through Death Row Records.
Death Row, alongside others like Priority and Ruthless, yeah. But that increased commercialization, it eventually led to conflict, both internal and external.
Right. The success fueled that intense, often theatrical East Coast versus West Coast rivalry.
And while it generated some monumental music, it tragically ended with the deaths of Tupac and the Notorious B.I.G., a really dark period that just fundamentally changed the genre's direction.
Speaking of Tupac, though, his rise was almost cinematic, wasn't it? Especially with that '96 double album, All Eyes on Me. It felt so tied to that public rivalry narrative.
It was.
So did that level of celebrity start to pull the genre away from the realism it was supposedly built on?
That's a really sharp question. The sources suggest it was a complex shift. I mean, Tupac's art was still intensely personal, still focused on social commentary.
But his persona became larger than life, a rock star.
Exactly. The narratives became less about simple street documentation and more about the existential struggle of a famous person caught between these two worlds. That duality, that's the defining contradiction of the mid-90s.
And visually, the look was just definitive. Music videos set firmly in South Central.
Lowriders, California beaches.
And the uniform. Dickies, crisp white T-shirts, Chuck Taylors, and the bandanas that subtly signaled affiliation. That whole look was synonymous with global power.
But as we head into the 2000s, that monolithic G-funk dominance starts to erode.
It had to.
Yeah, once a sound becomes too formulaic and its central label, Death Row, is just engulfed in conflict, the audience starts looking for something new.
And that decline of mainstream G-funk in the early 2000s, it forced a really vital turn, didn't it? It fractured the scene and pushed creativity back towards the underground.
Absolutely. The geography of innovation just diversifies. In Los Angeles, you saw this major underground resurgence. Collectives like Project Blowed and Freestyle Fellowship.
They were emphasizing technical lyricism, complexity.
And rapid-fire freestyle battles. They were stepping completely away from that smooth, slow G-funk template. They were like a laboratory for abstract lyrical ideas.
And crucially, this is the decade the Bay Area really asserts its own sound, the Hyphy movement. You can't talk about the 2000s West Coast without getting into what was happening up north.
Oh, for sure. Hyphy was this vibrant, frenetic counterpoint to the laid-back LA style. Faster tempos, high energy, and a focus on going dumb. Just releasing tension through wild, energetic dance.
Its car culture was different, too.
Very specialized, yeah. It was about customized American muscle cars and doing things like ghostwriting the whip. It really proved the West Coast wasn't just one thing. It was a collection of distinct regional voices.
So the whole sonic landscape gets much broader. You still have veterans like Daz Dillinger and Battle Cat working.
Right, but the experimental producers like Madlib really take center stage. They were pushing all the boundaries.
Madlib, working as part of Madvillain, delivered what many consider an underground masterpiece, Madvillainy in 2004.
That album was just known for its sheer musical experimentation, fragmented beats, dense lyricism. It was proof that the West Coast could embrace abstract artistry just as well as direct street narrative.
And yet, that classic gangster rap lineage never died out. The Games album, the documentary in 2005.
That was a pivotal release.
Yeah, it basically carried on the tradition that Dr. Dre had established, but it bridged the gap into the new decade. It kept that historical chain intact.
And the visual aesthetic changed dramatically. The regionalized Dickies and bandanas started to fade.
And you see elements of skate culture, graffiti, even jazz club settings coming in.
The fashion just reflected a broader, more global streetwear sensibility. Brands like Supreme and BAPE started to appear, which aligned the West Coast with trends happening in New York and Tokyo at the same time.
And that whole movement towards global synergy and artistic consciousness, it sets us up perfectly for the 2010s and today. This era is about elevating realism from simple documentation to profound social commentary.
And the primary figure driving that evolution is, of course, Kendrick Lamar. His rise just signaled a massive conscious and artistic resurgence.
He took the narrative drive that was established in the 90s and just infused it with this high-concept cinematic scope.
You think about Good Kid, M.A.80 City in 2012. It wasn't just an album. It was presented like a short film.
A structured narrative exploring identity, environment, trauma. He was using realism to create high art.
And then he pushed that boundary even further with To Pimp a Butterfly in 2015. He fused modern rap with these incredibly complex jazz and funk structures.
Yeah, the music itself became the vehicle for the criticism.
Exactly. He proved the West Coast could be both deeply rooted in its environment and incredibly musically sophisticated, which really connects back to the genre's earliest funk roots.
What's so fascinating now is how the mechanics of global distribution just accelerate all of this. The instant reach of the internet and social media, it's amplified the cultural influence faster than any previous decade.
And you're seeing a new wave of producers. You've got the minimalist, bouncy sound of DJ Mustard, the versatility of Hit Boy, and the experimental jazz fusion of Flying Lotus.
And the era is being defined by the power of labels like Top Dog Entertainment, TDE.
Right, which operates as this tightly focused hub for conscious, creative talent. It really embodies that independent spirit of the 2000s.
And the modern look reflects all this blending. It's a high-low fusion. You'll see luxury pieces from Gucci or Off-White mixed effortlessly with traditional street style.
And the videos themselves are cinematic. They demand attention not just for flash, but for the complex social messages they're trying to convey.
This cultural weight, it means the influence of West Coast hip-hop now extends so far beyond the records themselves. The narratives have profoundly shaped global cinema.
Oh, completely. They've cemented West Coast stories as fundamental American folklore. You've got iconic films like Boys in the Hood back in '91.
And the NWA biopic Straight Outta Compton in 2015.
Right. Those films just propagated these regional narratives to every single corner of the world.
So, pulling all this history together, what really stands out is that West Coast hip-hop isn't just one genre. It's a constantly adapting cultural current.
It influences social messaging, film, global fashion, because it's always trying to find a new way to tell the truth.
The expression of realism, that's been the relentless thread, but it keeps shape-shifting.
Yeah, it moves from the blunt, confrontational gangsta rap of the 80s through the commercial smoothness of G-funk into the incredibly deep, socially conscious narratives of today.
It's a dynamic, living culture.
For sure. And it shows no signs of stopping that process of absorption.
Which brings us to a final thought.
Right. And this is the thought we want to leave you with. Given this entire history of constantly absorbing and integrating new elements, from 70s funk to Bay Area Hyphy, jazz fusion, and high fashion, what is the next major cultural movement or technology the West Coast scene will absorb to redefine realism for the next generation? Will it be rooted in virtual space or new international sounds or even AI? What will the next Kendrick Lamar be sampling in 2030 to tell the story of struggle and resilience? That's the question that keeps this deep dive going.